Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your stacks of sources, articles, notes, whatever you've got, and we try to turn it into, well, actionable insight.
That's the goal.
And today, we're diving into something pretty high stakes. It's the Walt Disney Company. We're looking at their internal workings. Mm-hmm. Our mission, basically, is to sift through these recent reports, quite a few of them, actually, claiming some really profound shifts inside Disney.
Yeah, big changes reported.
Especially around their corporate and creative decisions, specifically diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI.
Right.
And looking at how those policies, allegedly, are directly tied to some, well, catastrophic box office results.
Yeah, and this isn't just, Hollywood gossip. It's really a critical business case study unfolding in real time.
Exactly.
It's super relevant right now because you've got this collision, right? Billion-dollar creative properties, IP, smashing into hard financial strategy.
Like the culture war stuff.
And all of it tangled up in this incredibly polarized culture war that's been defining entertainment. So our goal here is to really distill these claimed operational shifts.
Okay.
Understand the financial context that's supposedly driving them, and then maybe project out what this could mean for, the movies and shows.
The core idea from the sources seems to be that the box office pain just got too big to ignore. It finally forced their hand strategically.
That's the narrative coming through, yeah.
And we've got a perfect, tangible case study to anchor this whole discussion.
Mm-hmm.
The pivot point, the moment the sources say the brakes got slammed, it seems to center on the live-action remake of Tangled.
Ah, Rapunzel.
Yeah, the original 2010 animated film.
Yeah.
Huge hit, made almost $600 million globally.
Yes.
And that project apparently became the lightning rod, put on ice, according to reports, then supposedly brought back, but with totally different internal marching orders.
A real turnaround, if true.
So that's where we start. Let's unpack this operational whiplash, this whole Tangled.
Yeah, the Tangled story, the back and forth on it, it really does seem to act like a kind of corporate barometer here. It suggests, intense pressure at the top.
Okay, let's jump into section 1 then, the initial pause of the Tangled remake. So sources are saying early 2025 production just stopped abruptly.
Right. Yeah, just halted.
Which felt really unusual, right? The original film is super popular. You've got Maximus, the horse.
He's great.
And Mother Gothel, fantastic villain. It seems like a guaranteed moneymaker.
Ships.
So pulling the plug so suddenly, it definitely signaled something big was happening internally.
And the timing of that pause, as it's reported, is really telling. You'd normally expect fans to be outraged, right? Where's our movie?
Totally.
But the sources actually noted that the decision brought this, palpable sense of relief to a big chunk of the fan base.
Relief. That's counterintuitive.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking, the reports mention entire Reddit threads of people celebrating that the project got shelved.
Wow.
And that reaction, it speaks volumes about audience fatigue, doesn't it? They were apparently so wary of where Disney remakes were heading,
right,
that they felt pausing it was actually safer than seeing it potentially, butchered by adaptation choices they wouldn't like.
That feeling fans celebrating not getting content, that points to a huge breakdown in trust, doesn't it?
Massive. Which naturally leads us straight into the speculation about why they paused it.
Right.
Because to the audience, the delay just felt weird. If the plan was just a straightforward, faithful remake, why all the secrecy? Why the silence?
Good point.
So that immediately fueled all this chatter about the casting, especially for Rapunzel herself.
And this is where that idea of audience expectation, based on Disney's recent track record, really comes into play.
Exactly. The assumption among many fans, according to these reports, was basically that Rapunzel would be cast as anything but white. It was just seen as the expected outcome, given the company's recent direction. Whether that was actually the plan or not, that was the expectation.
And the sources, they detail this specific rumor, unverified, we should stress, that really added fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
The rumor that a black actress, Francesca Rivers, was potentially going to be cast as Rapunzel.
Right, and the source is careful, notes this may just well have been an internet rumor. No major outlets confirmed it.
Okay, but here's the key analytical point. Why did that specific rumor, unverified as it was, gain so much traction? Why was it so readily believed?
It points to this deep, almost psychological expectation the audience now has about how Disney handles its IP. When we talk about reporting impartially, we have to report the impact of the rumor. And the source suggests that impact was profound.
Okay.
The very fact that so many people apparently believed it demonstrates this feeling that Disney would be so crazy as to cast women in this role.
Even though,
as the source puts it, the role fundamentally made zero sense given the character's established, very specific visual description from the fairy tale, and it became this self self-fulfilling prophecy of casting controversy.
So the big question hanging over that initial pause was, why stop everything unless you had something pretty major and potentially controversial you were trying to manage or hide?
Yeah.
It suggested Disney kind of knew the casting direction they were considering, or maybe even had planned, was really high risk.
That it could lead to significant backlash, just like some previous remakes had.
Right. Mirroring past failure.
So the pause itself, it was read by a lot of people in the industry, and this is reflected in the sources as basically an admission that their risk management had failed somehow. Regardless of whether the Francesca Rivers rumor itself was true, it signaled they realized they were maybe walking into a known mine.
And they had to pull back temporarily.
Exactly, a forced retreat.
But a retreat that apparently only happened because something even bigger, more catastrophic had which brings us to section 2, the catalyst.
The Snow White effect.
The Snow White effect. Okay.
Yeah, while the Tangled pause was that immediate signal flare, the reports really pinned the true catalyst, thing that forced the bigger rethink, on the spectacular financial failure of the live-action Snow White.
Okay.
The pause on Tangled allegedly happened right after Snow White fell in an absolute, as one source put it.
Fell in the heap. And we need to grasp the scale here. Other remakes had stumbled, sure, but Snow White's failure, it was reported as being incredibly...
Yeah, it generated this undeniable number, a reported $300 million loss.
$300 million. That needs context. Is that just production cost? Or are we talking total loss, including marketing, P&A, everything?
The sources suggest that figure reflects the full scope, including those massive print and advertising costs, which always inflate the actual bleeding on these blockbusters.
Okay, so it's a colossal corporate write-down, not just a budget overrun.
Exactly. And it was so profound, it signaled an acceleration of their financial problems. Remember, films like Lightyear had already bombed, cost a lot. But $300 million down the drain on a flagship princess remake, that was reportedly seen inside Disney as a full-blown crisis.
Not an outlier anymore.
No, it was proof, according to these analyses, that their whole strategy for remakes, especially altering core characters, fundamentally broke. It was the financial alarm bell the C-suite just couldn't hit snooze on anymore.
And the criticism wasn't just about the money, was it? The sources dive into the creative side, too.
Oh, yeah. Snow White got hammered criticized for everything from creepy CGI to what the sources describe as improperly cast lead acts.
And the focus of that critique, especially from commentators linking it to the financial damage, seemed to land heavily on the casting of Rachel Zegler.
It did. The source material we reviewed suggests that hiring Zegler, framed specifically in these critiques as chasing diversity points over strict fidelity or performance, was seen as a major factor that capsized.
Wrong word.
It is. But that perceived prioritization, plus her, let's say, controversial public comments that seemed to alienate parts of the core audience, it led to this deep sense of betrayal about the story's director. The argument presented in these sources is basically when merit and what the audience expects take a back to some other overriding agenda, the market just reacts brutally.
Okay, this really demands the comparative financial analysis you meant. We need to look at the remakes that worked versus the ones that didn't. What's the common thread? Is it fidelity?
Absolutely. Let's look at the successful example cited in Take the 2015 Cinderella with Lily. The source highlights key things were kept. Blonde lead actress, the iconic blue dress, glass slippers. It met those core fan expectations for the magic.
Right, the visuals were there.
And crucially, it expanded the story, gave it more depth, didn't just change things arbitrarily. That film made $540 million. Did well.
Okay, what else?
Similarly, the remakes of Aladdin and The Lion, they stuck much closer to the original character designs, the core visual identity.
And they performed.
Significantly better globally than the later remakes where bigger changes were made to establish.
And it's really important to stress the point made in the sources here.
Yeah.
The issue isn't diversity itself. It's the unnecessary alteration of characters people already know and love.
Exact. The sources point this out. They mention successful Disney films with non-white leads, Moana, Mulan, huge hits. Even the more recent Lilo and Stitch live action, despite some controversies around Nani's casting, did insanely well, according to one report.
So original stories or faithful adaptations of cultural specific stories work fine.
That seems to be the distinction the audience is making based on these reports. Original content thrives. Adaptations that stick close to the visual and personality core of the source material, they thrive.
The problem arises when?
The problem, as defined by the critics cited in our sources, pops up when these established, emotionally resonant characters get fundamentally changed, and it looks like it's for external, maybe ideological reasons.
Which brings us to a struggling example, maybe a warning. The Little Mermaid.
Right. Not a $300 million catastrophe like Snow White reportedly was, but the sources note it barely hit $570 million, which sounds like a lot, but...
less than Aladdin and Lion King.
Exactly. Less well than those earlier, more faithful remakes. It signaled a definite downward trend for remakes that made significant changes to core characters like race.
So if we synthesize all of it, what's the crucial message the audience was sending, according to these reports?
The consensus reported is pretty clear. Fans aren't dumb. They see corporate maneuvering. They recognize what feels like pandering. And when a company changes a character's core, established traits, race, personality, backstory, whatever, the audience starts to lose trust.
They see it as prioritizing an agenda.
Right. Prioritizing an external agenda over the basics of good storytelling and respecting the source material they loved in the first place. The fear becomes, if you change Rapunzel's defining blonde hair today.
What stops you changing Simba into a poodle tomorrow?
Precisely. It erodes that fundamental trust, that contract between the creator and the audience about what an IP is.
And that erosion of trust for a company like Disney built on decades of nostalgia and emotional connection, that's devastating.
Absolutely lethal to the brand.
So the financial crisis from Snow White, plus this clear audience mess, it apparently led directly to some major internal...
Which takes us right into section reported internal changes and the big shift away from DEI.
Okay.
This is where the report suggests a really significant corporate turnaround. And the most immediate sign, like you said, is Tangled reportedly coming back onto the production schedule. But...
different this time.
Different this time. That's the phrase.
And this reported difference seems rooted in some pretty explosive claims from Hollywood insider Matthew Belloni.
Yeah, our sources cite Belloni directly on this. He's quoted saying the new Rapunzel role will go to a white actress.
Wow, that's blunt.
Very blunt. And the headline cited alongside it in the reports was E-Star. Disney is set to hire a white actress to star in its latest reboot after dumping DEI amid woke fury.
Okay, we need to handle this carefully. Belloni is considered an insider, but these are still claims about internal intention, not official Disney press release.
Absolutely critical distinction. We treat this as reporting on alleged internal plan. But the substance of the claim that Disney is explicitly changing its casting criteria for this specific high-profile role suggests a very direct, calculated response to those box office losses.
And the internal logic, according to the report citing Belloni.
It's driven by the historical source material. Rapunzel's story, rooted in 19th century German folklore.
Right, Brothers Grimm.
And the character is defined literally by her long golden hair. So the sources argue, adhering to that source, fidelity is now suddenly the top priority.
And what about the broader alleged shift away from DEI? Belloni reportedly claimed access to an internal company email about this.
That's the claim.
Right.
He reportedly saw an internal email stating Disney was officially disbanding its centralized DEI initiative.
Disbanding them entirely.
That's the report. And crucially, the stated intention moving forward was supposedly to empower everyone instead of select groups.
Okay, that phrasing is significant.
It is. It's framed in these reports as a major executive course correction. Basically, an admission that the previous focus on specific groups had led to, well, internal division and external.
And disbanding DEI isn't just sending an email, right? That implies.
Oh, it implies a huge internal reorganization, eliminating roles, dismantling departments, changing how hiring and content decisions are measured and greenlit. It's complex, probably messy.
So what's reportedly driving such a massive, risky corporate move? The sources mention fear.
Deep fear, according to the reports. They state Disney is now very afraid of Trump and Elon and the culture war they're currently losing.
So they see a direct link between their past stances and their current financial pain.
That's the reported internal, that the activist pressure they previously embraced, or at least yielded to, was now directly contributing to these huge box office losses, forcing them, essentially, to tack back towards the center, or even, as the sources claim, towards a more right-swinging cultural position, purely for financial survival.
And beyond the alleged email, did the reports list any concrete steps Disney has supposedly taken? Actual operational shifts?
Yes, they're reported as being quite First, claims of gutting film development areas that might cause trouble, reducing budgets, staff, influence in departments that were maybe focused on generating certain types of diverse content or enforcing specific narratives during development, basically cutting off the pipeline for projects deemed too risky.
Okay.
Second, and this is very visible, they reportedly removed their Reimagine Tomorrow website. Yeah, it wasn't just some page, it was the central public hub for all their diversity and inclusion goals, targets, initiatives. Taking it down is a really clear public signal.
The symbolic purging almost.
Purging the initiatives that reportedly got them into hot water and contributed to financial bombs like Lightyear and Snow White.
We need to frame this within the culture war context our sources are presenting, but impartially. They suggest this isn't just Disney, but part of a bigger trend.
That's right. The perspective reported is that Disney is basically reacting to a broader cultural pendulum swing.
Okay.
The claim is that everybody is aggressively moving away from wokeism and progressivism and shifting more towards the center, or in some cases aggressively swinging to the right.
And Disney's just caught in that tide.
The argument from the source is that this trend is forcing Disney to admit their previous path was a losing, and that ultimately financial pressure, when the company's pockets hurt enough, mandates a shift away from those ideologies back towards what their core audience traditionally demand. Business overrides ideology when survival's on the line.
Which brings us back squarely to the issue of source fidelity, especially with Tangled. Let's move to section 4. Character fidelity, Rapunzel, and this whole remake dilemma.
Yeah, this is where we really dig into the why behind the cast, the history.
Okay.
The original fairy tale, recorded by the Brothers Grimm, published early 1800s, it's explicitly set in Germany, European context.
Right.
And the character's defining feature, the thing the story hinges on, is her hair described explicitly as long, golden, or blonde.
And Disney's own animated version from 2010, Tangled, also visually established her as white with that iconic blonde hair. So consistency across adaptations.
Exactly. Which raises this fundamental debate about adaptation, especially in a visual medium like film, or remake, particularly of something beloved.
Comes with baggage.
It comes with a certain set of expectations, as the source puts it. Expectations about looks, personality, behavior.
And when those are unmet.
Especially when the change feels arbitrary, or worse, politically motivated, it triggers, reportedly, a tremendous amount. The audience sees it as a betrayal.
The sources we looked at had a particularly sharp critique of race-swapping established character, arguing it's harmful on two main fronts.
Yeah, two distinct arguments present. First, the claim that it's discriminatory and racist towards the original author and the character's origins.
Why so?
The argument is that erasing that original, culturally specific identity undermines the integrity of the artwork itself. It's seen as disrespectful to the source.
Okay, and the second point.
Second, and this is maybe more controversial, the claim that it's actually a form of soft bigotry towards minority actors.
Explain that.
The idea presented is that by giving roles seemingly based on preferential treatment or quotas, rather than purely on merit or fit for the established character, it creates a perception that minority actors can't get these big roles without the company intervening. It denies them the validation, the prestige of winning a role fair and square based on being the best fit.
That's a complex argument.
It is, but it's part of the critique being reported.
And this whole analysis seems to circle back to what the audience really wants, according to these sources.
Yeah, and it's stated pretty clearly, the audience isn't anti-diversity. They're dying for fresh new content.
New stories.
Exactly. New, interesting, well-written, original stories. Not just endless remakes and reboots of IPs they already hold sacred.
The emphasis is on quality.
Quality over politics. One source put it really blunt. People don't care if the lead in a good movie is black or white or Asian or a bag of sand.
Right.
The actor's race is irrelevant. If the movie's great, the story works. The problem, as defined by these sources and seemingly confirmed by the box office, is
Giving us
race characters and DEI initiatives and basically butchering stories is just not going to fly. That's a direct quote reflecting the sense. The audience wants new stuff or faithful adaptations, not political statements painted over old favorites.
So the lesson learned, according to these reports, is that remakes are just inherently tricky.
Yeah, full of so many potholes to step in, even when everything goes right.
And if you couple that difficulty with also trying to push a visible DEI agenda, as the source puts it,
it becomes a recipe for disaster. The reported strategy shift suggests Disney finally decided, okay, this is a losing issue financially. We have to change course.
And that financial realization seems to be driving changes beyond just the princess movies.
Oh, yeah. It extends much wider.
Let's broaden out then. Section 5, the broader strategy, winning back Gen Z men. So sources say parallel to fixing the remakes, Disney's also on the hunt for new original IP.
Right.
Specifically to appeal to and, quote, win back Gen Z men.
Which is a really fascinating part of this whole reported pivot, isn't it?
Yeah, the source notes the irony pretty heavily.
Deliciously so. This is the very demographic they have been calling racist and sexist for years now, according to the source's commentary. So it's a true mystery why the menfolk are not interested anymore. The fact that Disney reportedly has to launch a specific campaign to win over this suggests a clear internal understanding that their recent output has actively pushed away a financially crucial audience segment.
And you can't talk about that without mentioning the huge male-oriented franchises Disney owns: Marvel, Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
Exactly. These are the crown jewels where they've really struggled, reportedly, to connect consistently with young men. The reports link this need for new male-focused IP directly to perceived failures in those franchises.
How so? Give an example.
Well, look at Marvel. Recent projects cited in the sources, like She-Hulk or The Marvel, were often criticized by parts of the audience for prioritizing new, often female-led characters and narratives.
At the expense of?
At the perceived expense of established male heroes or the kind of traditional superhero action tropes that historically resonated strongly with young men.
Okay, and Star Wars.
Similar critiques reported there. The handling of legacy male characters like Luke Skywalker, the focus on new, sometimes seen as less developed female leads in shows like Ahsoka or the sequel. It allegedly caused significant alienation within that core male.
So it created this perception among Gen Z men, fair or not, that the new content just wasn't being made for them.
Exactly. That it was being made to satisfy internal metrics or external ideological goals rather than focusing on what that traditional audience segment enjoyed.
And when you combine that feeling across Marvel and Star Wars with the absolute cratering of the princess,
you see this picture emerge of a complete corporate breakdown in relating to massive chunks of their audience.
So connecting these dots is really the key takeaway for...
I think so. The hunt for new content specifically for young men, plus the realization that race swapping and remakes isn't working. It points to a cohesive company-wide shift. Driven purely by financial necessity, it seems. A strategic reaction to purge the approaches that led to financial disaster and desperately try to repair the relationship with a demographic critical for box office, streaming subs, and merchandise across all their biggest IPs.
Which brings us right back to where we started, really. The immutable law of Hollywood.
The bottom line.
The bottom line always wins in the end.
Seems that way.
Okay, let's try and summarize the main takeaway here. This alleged internal shift at Disney, we're talking reports of disbanding DEI, the new approach to Tangled supposedly prioritizing fidelity, the hunt for new male IP.
It all looks like hard-nosed, bottom-line business
Yeah, driven by those catastrophic box office numbers, especially the reported $300 million Snow White loss. And this corporate realization, again, according to the sources, that unnecessary race swap.
And maybe focusing too much on appealing only to activists, internally or externally.
Was just a losing issue. Damaging the IP, damaging the company's financial health, maybe beyond easy repair.
And the implication of this for the whole entertainment industry and for you listening, it's pretty profound, actually.
How so?
Well, if these trends reported inside Disney really hold true, it basically confirms that business performance, when the financial pain gets bad enough, when the pockets hurt enough, it will eventually override internal ideological pressure.
Money talks louder than politics eventually.
In this reported scenario, financial necessity acts like the ultimate conservative force. It compels companies back towards things like merit-based decisions, respecting source material for established IP, because that's what the paying audience is demanding.
So it's a powerful evidence, maybe, that the audience, just by voting with their wallets,
has potentially forced a massive strategic U-turn from the biggest entertainment company on the planet. Simply by not showing up for content they felt betrayed the original pushed an agenda.
That dynamic really is powerful. Okay, that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Building on this reported shift, if Disney is now supposedly fully committed to quality and source fidelity across the board, what non-princess classic IP would you most want to see them tackle next? Thinking maybe a deep-cut Star Wars era or a forgotten corner of Marvel, knowing that sticking to the original is now allegedly the absolute highest priority.
That's a good question to chew on. What becomes possible again?